back, everyone. My name is Joel, and you've heard me many times before on this podcast, and I'm also joined by Tim. You've heard many times on this podcast.
Not quite as many as you. But
Yeah,
yes.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yes, I am still ahead of you in the episode rankings.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm.
Have to stage a takeover with me and Stu, do a number of episodes just to catch up.
I welcome that. Bring it and see what happens, guys.
Yeah, you did a takeover of, was it this podcast or Chip Lunch?
Chip Lunch.
Chip Lunch, you did a takeover.
I think
episode.
it's like, I don't think people were that keen on it.
Oh, listen to it.
Unfortunately. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
I think it's
diverse tastes. Just the things you've been listening to and reading.
That's what I did. Yes, I just thought, well, why not? Why don't we do that?
Yeah, if you want to deep dive on Joel, go check out the Chip Lunch feed.
Yeah, it's like on Current Joel.
That's
what it was, wasn't it? Not really on my
just
history.
things you've been listening to, and you listed out podcasts and books and.
I do.
Yeah.
Mm. Yes, I don't listen to books though. I find that interesting. I can't listen to books.
Yeah, I found audiobooks are a great way of getting through some of the classics that are really dull, but I kind of feel like I should.
And you're like, oh, I've read it now.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, I had to put up with it. So, Les Mis was just atrociously dull. But just, get on with the plot, dude. And what was the other one? Hunchback of Notre Dame was another one. When you actually get to the narrative, it's thrilling, but then he just stops and tells you about, the monastery and goes on for 2 hours of telling you about the particular monastery and how it was built and who lives there. And, sorry, I got distracted. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Let's get back to the plot. And it's just, I think Victor Hugo he just really loved Paris.
He didn't have an editor.
Yeah, no, he didn't have an editor. That's true. That was his problem.
So it's always fascinating. Like, how does he end up getting published then?
Yeah, well, people had less TikTok back then, so
less
they
TikTok, more book printing.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, welcome to the podcast. This is probably the last one of 2023. Christmas is upon us, and we're going to talk about a few Christmas-related things today.
Yes.
But before we do that, I suggested Mr. Bean as a cultural artefact, and then I think we agreed, no, that's not the case. But you have a more interesting one.
Well, more current, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What is it?
So, so you guys were talking about, you and Stu were talking about slow horses.
Yes, we were
last week, which I've not yet got into.
Oh, I watched
partly because my Apple TV subscription has expired. So,
the only reason I'm watching Apple TV is because I got new headphones, new AirPods, and you get a free 3 months subscription to nice. Apple TV with that.
Nice little.
So I'm hoping that Slow Horses finishes before that runs out.
Yeah, right. But I have been on Netflix, and there is this great Paul Terry put me onto this German TV show called Dark.
Dark. Sounds dark.
It's ominous. There's an ominous presence across the series. So, but it's about this little town in Germany that doesn't have very many people in it. Just the key things that you need for a plot, like a hospital and a school and a high school, and most importantly, a nuclear power plant. So that's very important to the plot.
Right.
But what you find out in the first couple of episodes is that it's about time travel. And it is done so well.
Really?
It's shot beautifully. Like, it's just the actual scene, like the way it's shot, like just the cinematography is brilliant. But it's all about this. There's a cave, and the cave has tunnels, and they lead underneath the power plant. It's got all kind of things to do with dark matter and blah blah. Anyway, it sounds a little outrageous, but it is done exceptionally well, and I'm almost finished the second season, and it is just captivating. It's brilliant, and there's characters that go missing from one timeline who then will appear in other timelines, and then you realise how they were then connected to people. So it's the idea is that there are these this time is cyclical, and so you get these characters that are popping in and out of different timelines, and the way that impacts the storyline. And there's always that trouble with time travel, that if you go back in the past and you change something, like how does that affect the current? So the whole Back to the Future thing.
When I've time travelled, yes.
When you've time travelled, so the whole, the Back to the Future thing, where he goes back and
influences
things, which means that he may not end up existing. So, but what's happening in this one, because there's this idea that time is they're all caught in this cycle that continually repeats itself. So you go back in time, and you as a viewer are watching one timeline, you're watching it happen linearly, but you see them affect things in the past, and then you realise that actually you already know what that affects. So it hasn't changed anything, but with the actions that they're taking, you already know these consequences of what that would be.
Yeah.
Which ends up with this. There's one little paradox that's really important. There's a watchmaker who.
Oh, I'm interested.
Yeah, and he's the one who's created one of the time traveling devices, and he's also written a book about time travel. But you find out as you're jumping in between all these different timelines that are all exactly 33 years apart. I'm not exactly sure why that's the case, but 33 is really important.
Okay.
So they're all exactly 33 years apart. But the reason that he writes this book and creates the time machine is actually because people in the future have come back and given him those things, and he's only then. So they talk about there's a particular paradox where actually the book has no particular origin, because he only wrote the book because someone from the future came and gave him the book, which he then wrote. And so so there was no origin of it outside of this loop of time.
Wow.
That exists. And it's the same with the time machines. Anyway, it's probably sounding really crazy. It is brilliant.
Yeah.
Really, really excellent. So yeah, I'd recommend it highly.
Is it subtitled?
I watch it with subtitles. You can probably watch it with English dub, but I just find that frustrating because
that's weird.
Yeah, the voices and the mouthing doesn't quite come across perfectly.
Money Heist is that one that I was watching during COVID, and I think it's Spanish.
Right.
And the voices just don't. Sometimes some of the voices just do not fit with the character and what the character's saying.
Yeah, no, I'd rather listen in German and read the subtitles.
Is that helpful? Like, because you have German heritage, are you learning a bit of German?
I don't really I know there's a smattering of words every now and then. I'm like, oh, I know that one.
Nine.
Yeah, those ones that are fairly common with, have a strong overlap with English. Yeah, kind of obvious, but most of it goes over my head.
I struggle with time travel, but maybe I will give it a go.
Give it a go and see what you think. I mean, I'm not a massive purist when it comes to time travel. You have people who argue incessantly about the ins and outs of what you should do with time travel and not do with time travel, but I think this one is working quite well.
It sounds very complicated, but it seems like you've managed to to write a story in that way that's so complicated, but for you to understand it. They must have done really well.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite well acclaimed.
In Germany, at least.
Well, yeah, I mean, in Germany particularly, but it was one of the first German shows to be produced by Netflix, I think.
Right.
So it's got 3 seasons in total. So I've got one more season to go to see how it all wraps up.
It reminds me of my son reads a book series called The Butterfly Club, and they do a similar thing that they time travel, but they're not allowed to go too far, and they bring back inventions from the future.
Oh, right.
And introduce it earlier.
Yes.
But I'm still trying. I'm reading it to my 2 oldest children right now. I'm still trying to work out why they're doing that. I'm still unsure why they're doing that, but we're only about a quarter of the way through the first book. Ship of Doom is the first book.
Ship of Doom.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So yes, if you want something that's a little bit mind twisty, bendy, a little bit dark, but just captivating, I recommend.
Well, in contrast to dark, let's talk about the light of the world on Christmas.
That's Jesus.
That is Jesus.
Yeah.
This will actually come out after Christmas Day.
Right. Well, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Hope you had a good time.
Yeah.
But what I was going to ask you is, and as our children's pastor, you're also planning our children's service that we're having.
Yep.
Why don't we discuss what makes a good children's service, or what should be there or what shouldn't be there? Are we planning a really large production with lots of lights and lasers and things like that for the house children's
I don't really
service?
have the budget for that kind of thing, but
yes.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you can time travel and figure
Maybe
it out.
time travel, yeah. Or if Athletic Greens wants to pick us up. And sponsor
AG1?
Yeah, AG1, yep. Yeah. Pick up some sponsorship.
The only reason we want that is we need lasers.
Yeah, we need lasers. Yeah, it's a sponsorship for the podcast. No, I think... we're not doing a lot of lasers and lights. So we talk a lot on the podcast about our strategy as a church and talk about intergenerational ministry a lot. And we also talk, I think it was Stu last week, he's kind of playing around with this term of moderate intergenerational churching.
Yes.
And so moderate intergenerational ministry is one that looks for opportunities for intergenerational engagement, but is also not going all the way to the extreme of saying, well, everything you do all the time must be intergenerational. And I think that plays out obviously in the way that we still prioritise excellent age specialist children's ministry, youth ministry, seniors ministry. We don't really have that much as a church, but there'll be those kind of things. There have been times when we've had crafting ministry, so that's based around a particular interest. And so there are things where it's still appropriate to get peers together, whether that be generational peers or life stage peers or interest peers, and that's totally fine. So not everything you do has to be all in, all together all the time. And so when it comes to the Christmas Eve service, one of the things that we used to do at Skymere when Tracy McCall was in charge of the Christmas service and I was kind of her offsider, was to run kind of a pageant kind of style, like a pantomime kind of, like lots of characters and dress ups and very kiddish.
I enjoy that. Yeah,
it is really fun. And when it comes to thinking about those kind of events, I've got this little paradigm in my head where I'm thinking, is this more like Play School or Pixar? This is kind of the differentiation in my head. Mm-hmm. So Play School is aimed at kids. So you're intentionally designing your program to be accessible to kids. It's pleasant for the parents to have on in the background, but your no intention is to attract teenagers, even primary school kids, teenagers, anyone else upwards with the program. You're not going to have a 20-something-year-old single person who goes, I think I might watch some Play School. So it's designed for kids very explicitly. Pixar is a little bit broader in its approach. So, of course, because it's cartoony and cute, you do get a lot of kids who engage with it, but you get a lot of older kids that engage with it. You got some teenagers that might be interested in watching it as well, even if they go with a younger sibling. And then it's also something that parents really enjoy sitting and watching as well, because even if the kids are a nice excuse to watch it, but it's brilliant storytelling and they're really creative and captivating.
And they often intersperse like appropriate adult jokes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Little references that adults will get, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so when you get to Pixar and you're starting to get more kind of intending something for all age, all stage, as opposed to intending something that is explicitly for kids. With our Christmas Eve kids service, I'm thinking more in the line of it's Play School rather than Pixar. I don't expect any of our teenagers at church to come to the kids service and feel that it's something that they should be engaging with in any meaningful way. Some of them might turn up, some of them might turn up because their families come, some of them are actually, we're engaging them in the service itself. So some of them are on band, they're on the slideshow, they're on the sound, they're in the play, but it's not meant to be meaningfully faith formative for teenagers or for anyone who wants to just come and enjoy. The reason you would come to this is because you have young children and you just enjoy your young children engaging with something fun and childlike and festive that tells the Christmas story in an interesting way. And so that's what I'm particularly thinking of in terms of that. So it's another example of where it's not designed to be intergenerational. Though, I mean, there are people who come who don't have kids and just enjoy being there because they enjoy hanging out with kids. But it's the relationship they have with children that they enjoy watching Christmas through their children's eyes or through children in the church's eyes that they want to experience this with the kids rather than coming to something because they will find value and benefit for themselves.
With that in mind, are you writing a new almost like a new play every year, or are you just pinching different parts and putting it together to make it something that fits what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean you're telling the Christmas story every year, so in one way the narrative doesn't change. But there's lots of different creative ways of getting to that same. There's different skins you can put on to that same idea. So you've got the core bits that are never going to change. You're going to tell the story. You're going to talk about Jesus. You're going to sing Christmas carols. You're going to have the narrative, at least some of the narrative of the Christmas story. You don't necessarily do all of it every year. Sometimes you might focus more on Mary and Joseph. Sometimes you might focus more on the shepherds. This year we're focusing more on the wise men. So you're going to be one of our wise men.
I am. Yes.
Yes.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be really fun. And so we will have. And so then you just kind of find some creative way of telling that story. The way Tracy used to run it was really good. When we had it at Guy Mere, she would basically just have a different skin on, and it was basically whatever was kind of popular with kids at that point. So when Care Bears had a bit of a resurgence, we had a Care Bear theme. When Happy Feet came out, we had a penguin theme. When Bob the Builder was getting big, we had Bob the Builder theme. Like, it was basically what are kids interested in this year? Let's just put that skin on it. And then there was some sort of MacGuffin. There's I don't know where this comes from. There's this idea in movies called the MacGuffin, which is basically the item you are searching for in a movie. So, action movies that are always, we have to save the world because X is happening. X is the MacGuffin. I think it comes out of like film theory or something.
The object, an object, device, or event that is necessary to the plot and the motivation of the characters, but insignificant, unimportant, or irrelevant in itself.
Yes. Yeah. So no one actually cares, or you don't even have to understand it. So the latest Mission Impossible movie where they're hunting some sort of AI-generated computer.
Oh, are they? I didn't know that.
And it's just like, no one cares about the AI-generated computer. It's just the object that moves the plot along and creates the sense of threat in the movie.
I see.
And so the way Tracy would do it, she would just have this MacGuffin. It was always Care Bear was trying to find their rainbow or whatever. Although that's all right. They didn't have a picture on their belly, and every other Care Bear has a picture on their belly. Why don't I have? And so the whole thing is trying to find the picture that should be on their Care Bear's belly. Bob the Builder has a problem that he can't fix because he can't find his hammer, or can't find his screwdriver, or whatever it is. And so you've just got these little things that are just moving the plot along. But really, it's just an excuse to tell the Christmas story again.
So what's this year's?
Well, so this year it's all about, the theme is the perfect gift. And so we're looking about the perfect gift. So we focus on the Magi, and each we're going to have these groups of Magi come through, one with gold, one with frankincense, one with myrrh. And we're going to explain creatively why those objects are the perfect gift for this particular child, and then why Jesus is the perfect gift for us.
For everyone.
Yeah. So simple little premise.
Yep.
And you just do it creatively. And so you just got these little avenues by which you can just tell a simple story, but retell the same old story again and again. And the thing about doing it for kids is you feel like you've done the Christmas story. I mean, I'm 41, so I've done the Christmas story 41 times in my life. But these kids have only done it 6 or 7 times. So they're not bored of it yet. So
really, you've got to change it up for yourself.
Sometimes, yeah. I have this problem with I do a scripture assembly at the local school, and I've done scripture assemblies at this school for Easter and Christmas for the last 16 years, and it's often just me who has done them, and it's like I'm now bored of me, but then I have to remember, actually these kids haven't seen me 16 times. Yeah, right. They've only seen me 6 times. So
don't be too hard on yourself.
No, that's all right. Yeah. I just get bored.
I get bored with myself.
Yeah.
Have you got a memory of a Christmas service that really impacted you or someone else, and you're like, oh yeah, that was great that we did it that way?
I can't think of a really great one. I can think of the time it went really wrong.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
Well, I mean, it wasn't terrible, and the only person who noticed was me.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
So it was Horton Hears a Who. I think the animated movie had just come out.
The Dr. Seuss story.
Dr. Zeus story.
Zeus or Zeus?
Zeus.
Zeus? I don't know how to say it.
And so I was dressed up as an elephant, and I was Horton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was always the character. This was the other thing about Tracy's plays, because she was the children's minister. She got to do the adult
organising,
but also she was just Tracy.
Yep. And
I was always the random
character of some kind.
Yeah, that she would run. So I was dressed up in as this elephant costume, and the MacGuffin was this letter that Horton had received. And so the service started. They sang, some sort of song. I walk in, everyone's like, "Oh wow, it's Horton. He's dressed as an elephant." Hilarious. I come in and Tracy goes, "Oh, so Tim, Horton, have you I hear you got a letter from someone." And I'm like, yes, I think I've just left it out the back. And Tracy goes, "Oh, that's a shame." And she just rolled it. She goes, "Well, how about we sing that song again while you go and find it?"
That's great.
Like, great.
Yeah.
So she just rolled with it, just did another song.
I think that's what I love about it, though. It's just like something could go wrong like that.
Totally.
And then we just keep moving on because it's like we're all having fun.
Yeah. So I ran out the back.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, it's in my office." And so I ran to my office. The office was locked. I looked in the window. My keys were on the inside. Next to the MacGuffin, next to this letter. And so I'm running around trying to find someone who has keys that could let me into the office in time for this song to finish. And I was quite stressed trying to think, I'm ruining the whole show.
Yeah.
No one would have cared.
Yeah.
But anyway, I found the warden. He let me in and grabbed it, ran back up just as the song was finishing, and no one else was the wiser.
Excellent.
So that was the time that it just sticks in my mind, because I was like, "Oh no, is this going to work?" But yeah, it was fine. But I think it's just, I think all of them are, you're helping create a moment of fun and frivolity and joyfulness
to better understand the story of Jesus.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just an avenue through which to tell that old story. And ultimately, you want the kids to just know that as Christians, as people who love Jesus, we love telling his story and we have fun doing it, and because it's a joyful story. And so I think that's the key. I mean, you could go too far. You could lose the focus of the story in the frivolity. You could go too big on the decorations and the sets, or the comedy of it, or whatever,
or the production,
and lose Jesus. And that's why, I mean, you made the joke before about lights and lasers and whatnot, but I also think there's actually something really important about the way we do long-term, low-key relational discipleship. So that's one of the phrases we use a lot as a church. And I think that low-key is really important, that we're actually not going for high polish. We're not going for high production value. Not that we don't put effort in, but we're not trying to achieve success by measuring of the largeness of the production or the polish of the production. Success for us is, have we enjoyed as a family together the story of Jesus, and have we celebrated him appropriately, respectfully, with a joyfulness, a frivolity that just says, here we are together as friends, enjoying the story of Jesus together.
Well, I think that's why when you said you forgot the envelope, that Tracy just rolls with it and goes, "Oh, we'll just do this song again."
Yeah.
And the people who are playing the song are like willing to, cool, we'll just do it again. This is fun. But it's the low keyness of that allows like funny things or silly mistakes like that to be just, we just roll with it. Whereas if you're putting a high amount of concentration on the performance or the production or the polished, that polished view of it, that leads it to being like, this is separate from people in the congregation too. And there's something about having the low keyness relational aspect that you're talking about to make it more engaging.
Yeah.
But also more we're sharing in it rather than up the front and down.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the pews or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that's why I think it's fun when I really enjoy, I've said many times before, I enjoy comedy, but I enjoy comedy in that sense of that, people are just like, yeah, this is fun and joyful. And I feel like people will connect with that. Like maybe people that sometimes just come for the kids' Christmas service will be like, oh, that was fun. And now we understand the story of Jesus, or we know the story of Jesus, or we recollect it in that way, rather than, I remember that amazing performance, but maybe it's almost taking the attention away from the story to some degree. Do you reckon?
Yeah, you can be distracting by but putting too much emphasis on policy. You lose why it is that we're coming together. And I think it's sort of an extreme example is the kind of the dance mum phenomena. You get these parents that are so over the top in the pressure that they put on their young daughters or sons that they lose the sense of, now this was just, it's meant to be something engaging for your child to do. And you probably get the same thing on the sideline of soccer. Like you get parents that are just so invested in their child, their team, and their definition of success, which is so outside the scope of, this is just weekend soccer. Like it's just 6-year-olds running around with a ball.
And I actually find more often than not, it's about the parent, not about the child.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And so, those measures of success end up being some deficit that the parent sees in themselves. And then I can use my child to supposedly fill that deficit, but it doesn't end up being fulfilling for the child or for the parent in the end. Yep. So I think, you're right. Something I've been thinking about lately, and it's just some of the things I see online, in particular from America. And I think the church culture in America is very different to Australia. And just the amount of money and things like that are available in Christian circles in America. And that, in one sense, I think that's really amazing, because that means there's lots of people going to church in America, which is really great. But just there is some of the content that I've seen, there's this tendency of like, you just need to put on a great production. It needs to be extremely good up the front. You see there's like, they call them worship teams, and they have these gigantic displays and light shows and all this kind of thing, because that's what's going to draw people to church. But I think, and it could be a cultural difference as well, but I just much prefer what we're talking about here in terms of the children's service and making it fun and low-key and relational. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but and you've spent more time in America in church.
I've
involved in church things than me, so.
I'm mostly from far. I haven't actually spent all that much time in America itself. I remember there was this video that did the rounds about this time last year of a rehearsal for one of these big American mega church Christmas productions, and they had people dressed up as like nutcrackers with like drums, and they're doing snare drum, and they were attached to wires, and so they were flying back and forth across the auditorium. And it was just like, this is just ridiculous. But it's I suppose the best possible reading is, let's do something that's super attractive, that people want to come to, that's enjoyable and engaging, and therefore when they come, they'll be able to see this amazing spectacle, and then you tell them about Jesus. So that's the best possible spin, I would imagine, on that. The problem is, and I was having this conversation this morning with a friend I was recording a podcast with, was just there's this old adage that what you win people with, you win them to. So if you win them with something that is attractional, something that is kind of targeted like in the commercial, sort of a crass commercial type thing. Like I want you to, want this product and to buy this product, and it's easy, and it's, then that's what you win them to. You win them to a Christianity that is commercialized and easy to digest and is attractional. And discipleship then becomes just keep putting on church as a production where people feel comfortable and easy and not challenged and constantly feeling that person is the center of the church, because we keep trying to attract them. We're trying to cater for them. We're trying to make church all about them. And actually, church isn't about them. It's first and foremost about God, about Jesus and who he is calling his people to be and the people he is creating around himself. And if that's the case, then sometimes church is going to be really difficult. It's going to be hard, but it's also going to cost me something to be involved in church. And so the question is, are you willing to sacrifice and to give in order to be part of this community of God's people? Now, as we talked about a number of weeks ago, we talked about this on and off a bit this year. When there is a cost, there is then on the other side of that cost, there's a higher buy-in. So the payoff on the other side is actually a deep commitment to those people, because it has cost you a lot. And the cost isn't necessarily a bad thing either. And I said this a few weeks ago. There's that parable of the pearl of great price, or the man with the treasure in the field. And the verse says, in their joy, in his joy he went and sold all he had so he could buy the field. In his joy he went and sold everything he had so he could buy this pearl. So there was a cost to it. Absolutely, there was a cost. You don't get Christianity for free. It is free, it's God's grace. But it is going to cost you. It's going to cost you your own life that you're building out for yourself. It's going to cost your comfort. It's going to cost you being conformed by the patterns of this world, to be transformed by Christ. There are going to be things that it costs you, but actually what you gain on the other side of that cost is well and truly worth the cost. And I was thinking that is what some of these big production that makes it really easy is not communicating and not helping people to understand, because we make going to church easy. We make it really comfortable. And there's never a point of challenge. Whereas I think doing things in low-key relational ways, then I think even just the smaller scale means that you get to know the people in the congregation. It is relational, it's slow, it's long-term, and that helps you to build the capacity to actually be formed as a disciple of Jesus alongside these other people. It's really easy to just sit and consume church when you're in a building of 4,000 people. It's really hard to sit and consume church when you're one of only 50 people in the room or 100 people in the room. So I think that you're forced into deeper discipleship, and I think that that's a good thing for people.
I feel like also on the flip side of that, my concern with that attractional way of doing things, it's almost like a bait and switch and it's really just playing off what you were saying though, of if you come and it's easy, it's always going to be easy and it won't cost you much. That's what I think you're trying to say, but that's not true. Then we know that church is messy. So if someone comes to that church via that way of doing ministry, it feels like there's going to be a time where something's going to go wrong, something's not going to be great, there's suffering's going to be involved, and there's almost a sense of like, why should this be happening to me? I thought church was all this high intensity or high production, great value, not costing me anything. That's my concern with it, I think. Yeah,
you haven't built the spiritual muscle memory to know that
that's very good.
Being a Christian is hard work.
Yeah, I think that's the title for the podcast, Spiritual Muscle Memory. Yeah, but it is hard work, isn't it?
Yeah. And consistently, there are going to be times when there's great joy. Of course there is. And that's what we said earlier. We're doing this fun thing because being a Christian is awesome. It's great joy. However, it's not just all joy all the time. There are really hard bits. And there's effort that needs to be put in order to get to joy on the other side. And so if we have this cotton candy Christianity, which is really easy to consume, then it's it's short-lived and it doesn't build a depth of discipleship, because discipleship requires hard work. You see, even the way Jesus teaches, like he doesn't teach in a way that's really easy.
Parables, for example.
Parables, for example. He doesn't explain them. He just says a parable and then waits to see how it lands. And half the crowd goes, I got no idea what he's talking about. And they walk away.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay. One of my favourite passages is John 6, where the crowd comes to him and they've just had the feeding of the 5,000 and they say, do it again. Give us more bread. Give us more fish. That was awesome. And he says, all right, this time you've got to eat my flesh and drink my blood if you want to have eternal life. And they go,
what does that mean?
That's weird.
We're not cannibals.
Yeah, we're not cannibals. And it says like the crowd, and it also says the disciples turned away and left him. Then he turns to the 12. So obviously there's this distinction between this kind of large group of disciples that seem to be here. But even those who had been following him for a while turned away and said, that's teaching's too hard. I don't understand that. And he turns to the disciples and he goes, well, what about you guys? You're going to leave too. And Peter says, well, where else are we going to go? You alone have words of eternal life. And the thing I really like about that is Jesus, it's not that he's unconcerned about those who leave, but he has this non-anxious presence amongst them. There's non-anxious telling of the truth. And if people walk away, then he doesn't change his tact and try and make it easier for them to stay. He just goes like, no, this is going to be hard. And you see that all the way through his ministry. You've got to take up your cross and follow me. And he says, you better count the cost before you follow me. He tells the parables about having to, a poor builder starts building without thinking about how much it's going to cost him to build the tower. A wise builder is going to calculate the costs and see if they've got enough. Two armies going to war, you're going to work out whether you've got enough army to bother taking on that other person. And he says, if you're going to follow me, you've got to consider whether it's actually worth it for you. And so he really slows people down, and he doesn't make it easy. He doesn't do attractional, come and watch this, and then it's actually going to be super easy to follow me. You just have to do a few things here, and then you can live in a life of comfort. He doesn't say that at all. Like, he actually makes it difficult for people. And I think that there's a way in which we can communicate the good news of the gospel that doesn't hide the fact that it is complicated and that it's difficult. And that's okay, because it's also worth it. And I think that's what Jesus is trying to communicate in those things. And I think that's what Peter gets. I don't think Peter understands in that moment in John 6 what Jesus is talking about.
That happens a bit with Peter.
Yeah.
Later, doesn't it?
So, but Peter has seen enough of Jesus to say, even when I don't understand, I'm going to trust and I'm going to follow you no matter what. So he says, you alone have words of eternal life. I don't understand those words. The whole eating your flesh and drinking blood, that's weird. I don't get that. But I trust you enough to stick with you. And
stick through the messiness and the cost and the sacrifice that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And again, as we just said, come back, like the whole, the mega church spectacular, big production kind of stuff is, I don't think, does a good enough job of communicating the cost of discipleship and how difficult it is. It makes it easy and doesn't ask much of you. You can just come and sit in an auditorium and watch a play and go, oh, isn't that nice? I've done Christmas now.
And this is amazing. It usually is amazing.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And so, their production value is going to be heaps higher than anything we ever do. But I wonder whether the trade-off is that not asking as much of people actually doesn't give them a spiritual resilience to challenge.
Spiritual resilience, maybe another good title. Well done.
Spitting them
out. And I think also that is part of it, just going back to the attractional thing again, another concern, I suppose, is it looks a bit like it's, and this is something we've talked about before, is copying culture. And if the church does copy culture, it's always going to be 5 years behind. So therefore it's not achieving what that idea of being attractional is probably the case anyway. And then leaning on more of the things that Stu's been studying into Andy Crouch's work, but it's our job to create cultural Christian goods. And I think part of talking about the kids service over many years is that's in a way that's a cultural Christian good. It's using different motifs or skins, as you called it, to tell exactly the same story, and that's the most important story. And even if you didn't put anything on and you just told the story of the birth of Jesus, I think that's pretty cool to do anyway, isn't it? But then you can use some creativity to not change the story of Jesus being born, but you can use it to tell that story in different ways. I think is really that's a really, really cool thing to do.
Yeah. And I think the difference is that you can have fun in order to try and attract people to Jesus, or you can have fun because as Christians, it's really joyful
expressing that joy.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think that the one that is striving for attractional ministry is not going to succeed. It might succeed for some people in the short term, but in the end, there's always going to be something more exciting to go to. Yeah. No matter how good those productions are, actually a Taylor Swift concert is going to be a heaps better production value.
Cirque du Soleil.
Cirque du Soleil. Yeah, and you can keep trying to chase those things, and you go, oh, wouldn't it be good if our Christmas thing was as good as a Cirque du Soleil production? But your motivation there is trying to chase culture, like you're trying to copy culture, and you're trying to be the most exciting place, whereas on the opposite side, it's, no, I'm friends with Jesus. I've been reconciled to Christ because of the blood of Jesus. I've been reconciled to these people in this room because of the blood of Jesus. And since we're together, how good is it to express our joy with each other? And let's find really fun ways of doing that.
Yeah.
And it's, in some ways, it may not look all that different from an outsider, but it's a significant difference in the hearts and the minds of the people who are being motivated to actually do that. And I think that that's really important.
Having said that, I think we should get some lasers at some point.
Okay, yeah, well, let's get some lasers then.
Maybe
those little laser pointers there. That was fashionable about 5 years ago. So we're just behind culture.
I mean, it was, I mean, laser pointers were a big thing when I was in high school or even primary school, maybe.
Yeah. And those ones you could take down planes with, and
supposedly.
Yeah.
Pretty good sales job. That. People that bought that. All right, so let's move on to Christmas things.
Okay.
So one thing I think would be cool to talk about is that we just finished our Christmas Carols event.
Yes.
You were one of the hosts, the MCs.
The MCs, yes.
What were your reflections on Christmas we called it Light Up the World.
Yep.
Christmas Carols. There's the event that we ran in what we call, it was a development area. You actually live there.
Yes.
An apartment blocks called South Village, and they have a large park there.
Yep. Biddy Giles Park.
Is it Biddy Giles or Biddy Giles?
Biddy Giles? Biddy Giles? I don't know.
Okay. It's called Biddy Giles Park. That's the only time we ever call it that.
Yeah.
Because we have to call it its real name. But yeah, what's your reflections on carols? Did you have a good time? I think it was probably the biggest attended one we've had. It was
definitely the biggest attended that we had. Yeah, yeah.
Because you've MC'd a couple of years, so you would be able to see the wonderful audience.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Me and Ethan jump up and MC. This is our second year. So obviously we didn't do terribly last year because they asked us back.
No, I think you did really well.
It's a bit like Ricky Gervais doing the Golden Globes. You just kind of keep doing it until you get asked not to again.
You get cancelled enough.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe we get cancelled. It was really fun. It's a joy to do, and I think it's really interesting because we live in a very post-Christian society. Very small percentage of people come to church or interested in Christian things. And yet, even amongst a very post-Christian society, the carols still seems to be a cultural thing that people are willing to come to. I mean, we had hundreds and hundreds of people who were there in attendance, most of whom we have not seen before as a church.
Yeah, they're not part of our church.
Not part of our church, no. And so they come along and they sit and they enjoy. Some may be singing along. I don't know. It's hard to tell if people are singing.
It is hard.
But they're there, even if it's just a live music event. But it's clearly Christmas carols. It's clearly put on by a church we read the Bible. Stu did a short talk just explaining who Jesus is and what Christmas is all about.
Yep. All the carols were about Jesus.
All the carols are about Jesus, except for Jingle Bells.
Except for Jingle Bells, yeah.
Yep. Throw one in for the kids. There's, there was some kind of carnival type aspect. Like we had some kids activities and craft and painting and things that they could do. There was big lawn games that we hired to have on there. And I'm just genuinely surprised that people want to be there and want to partake in something that is explicitly Christian, and yet again not anxiously kind of self-conscious, I suppose. Like we talked before about being confidently Christian, non-anxiously confidently Christian. I think that's what it is. It's just like, hey, here we are. We're putting this on. We're from the church. We love Jesus, and we're going to sing some carols because we love Jesus, and we're going to read the Bible because we love Jesus, and we're going to talk about the first Christmas because we love Jesus. Yeah. And hundreds and hundreds of people would turn up, most of whom don't go to church as far as we can tell, and are happy to sit there. And I just think that's astounding for starters. And I guess also the low-key relational dynamic that we have as a church means that the way we present the gospel there is clear, it's direct, but it's also not, there's no call for response. There's no trying to follow up people's details or anything. It's just, we're just communicating this. We love Jesus. Here we are. We're not ashamed about that. We're also not bludgeoning you over the head with it. And that's our church building just there across the road, and you'd be really welcome to join us because obviously Kirrawee not too far away for you. So, why not check out a regular service? And the kids take tracts home, and everyone had a card with a QR code that directed them to the lyrics, which also had links to the website. So they've all got access to it. But I just feel like there was a relaxed tone to the way that we communicate it, which is really lovely. It speaks of who we are as a church. Yeah,
it's like non-confrontational, but it still wasn't shirking away from the truth.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. And I just think there's just really gentle and winsome way that you can communicate the gospel that is clear and that people can hear, and just allows them to think about the gospel, what it might mean for them as well. And we spent time in prayer beforehand. We met together as a team and prayed through the event and prayed for those who were coming, and then you just entrust that the Spirit is working and slowly chipping away at people and slowly helping them to understand actually there is more to this than just a nice cultural moment where you sit on a rug and eat barbecue chicken while listening to a band play. That actually there's something more, there's something deeper going on here. But without us having to feel like we have to be really self-conscious about doing that. So I think on either side of where we're trying to hit, you could have something there was no gospel because you're just trying to do a good community event, and there was no particular mention of Jesus, just a nice night out. Or you could have something where you kind of come with the Billy Graham crusade kind of feel, like you tell the story and you communicate to the crowd. You're all lost. You're lost, don't you? You really need to turn to Jesus. That I just don't think that in our post-Christian world that is going to communicate what we think it's communicating. And so what we create is a moment of open invitation, clarity on the scriptures. So there's no backing down on the clarity, but there's just a genuine openness to it that just says, hey, this is who we are. And we're unapologetic, passionately about this. And if you'd love to consider that for yourself as well, then we want to create a compelling story for you to do that and create the opportunities and avenues by which you can follow that up for yourself.
I think it was a good example of creating another Christian cultural good, is that we're in the community. You're very welcome to come, but we're not watering down the gospel here at all.
Yeah.
We're not. Jesus was born, and he was born to save the world.
Yeah.
And this is why, and then we're going to sing about it.
Yeah.
And then we'll read the Bible that says that.
Yep.
And we'll also have a Bible talk that talks about that too. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And there have been times in European history where Christians have been on the forefront of creating cultural goods. You know, you think about some of the artwork that came out of the Middle Ages, you think about stained glass windows, you think about the beauty of some of these cathedrals, the architecture that was inspired because they were inspired by who God was and the grandness of God, the vision of God that created these incredible structures, the paintings, the music. You know, you've got Handel's Messiah, which is still this just amazing, you know, opera type style music. I don't know enough about classical music, so apologies for getting it wrong. But yeah, this beautiful opera where that is just about Jesus. Just it's all about the Messiah, very explicitly, and yet it's known as one of the most wonderful classical works of art, and is still performed every year at the Opera House with, you know, and sell out crowds. And so you have these things where have come down to us even hundreds of years later because they were such good cultural goods, such compelling articulations of who Jesus is. And it's not just because the West was, you know, Christianized. It was because people who genuinely loved Jesus were creating things, and they knew who Jesus was, and they create works of art because of that, good cultural goods, sculptures and paintings and you know, architecture and all these kinds of things, musical work. And we lost that somewhere. I'm not quite sure where we lost it. I don't know enough about history, but you know, certainly the Christian music that was around when we were growing up was, you know, fun. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've just got bands that are copying the pop punk of the day or the glam rock of the day, or there's very few Christian bands or Christian musicians that stand out as genre defining. You know, they are creating the best possible version of this genre of music or whatever. You know, you don't have a lot of Christian architects that are making explicitly Christian buildings that are beautiful and, you know, communicate the worth of God in what they create. And I just, yeah, we ended up trying to copy culture. And as you say, ended up 5-10 years behind where culture was, rather than actually just saying, no, because we love Jesus, we're just going to try and create the best that we can. And you're right. I think that the Carols event is, we as a church, we love Jesus. We love celebrating Christmas. We do love Kirrawee. We've got a heart for Kirrawee. We want to see Kirrawee saved and radiating out from that to our other centres and you know, Shire, Sydney, Australia, the world. And so we want to share that with them. But again, that orientation comes from, we know who we are and we just want to share that with others in creative and compelling ways.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because, like using your examples of across history in terms of cultural goods, I wonder if it's because as we've become increasingly post-Christian, it's just not even in the realm of most people's thinking to create something like that. Whereas, I don't know, when you were talking about the 15th century and the cathedrals and stuff like that,
yeah,
it was much more focused around, or yeah, nations were like, we are Christian. So that might be, maybe, again, I don't know enough. What if we finish with this episode with a little bit of a Christmas special?
Oh,
even though it'll be after Christmas. How do you celebrate Christmas as your family?
Yeah, very low key.
Low key, long-term relational.
Long-term relational, yeah. So the couple of quirks of both mine and Ross's family is that we actually end up not doing anything on Christmas Day.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah, so we go to church. We celebrate Christmas Day with God's people, which is awesome. And I really love that. And yeah, so we just hang out at church, and we're often the last to leave because we're not rushing off to do anything. And then we typically go home. We might have a small roast, like a turkey roll or a chicken roll or something that's just, chucked in the oven with some baked veggies. Have that together as a family. Sometimes my parents will come round in the afternoon and share a pudding. But my brother and his in-laws, so my brother's in-laws, they have a whole lot of Christmas Day things that take up all of day. Right. And so my immediate family, my brother, his family, my sister and my parents, we don't hang out until the 27th. And that's our regular day.
Why the 27th?
Oh, because it's not Christmas Day or Boxing Day. I think it's kind of the next day after that.
Yeah, okay.
And so this year we're going out to a restaurant and just enjoying some food, and it's pretty low key.
There you go.
So in the lead up to Christmas, we have we set up the Christmas tree, and we have an advent calendar. We're not very good at keeping to remembering. We have the little names of Jesus. So there's 25 names of Jesus, and you turn one over each day and read a verse. That's the ideal. We actually haven't quite got to that. Life is really busy. Roz has said a few times that it'd be better for us to celebrate Advent after Christmas, because that's when life has actually slowed down. They've actually stopped.
That's true.
So she's a school teacher, so she works right through until late December. I work through till Christmas Eve, and that's my first day of holidays. And so it's life just kind of has this craziness. But then we have really cruisy January. So often we've done Advent candles, an Advent wreath on the table.
That's nice.
I
only recently learned about that from someone in our community group who she was born in Germany and introduced that idea of there's the 4 different candles.
Yes.
Peace, joy, love, hope.
Yep.
Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Yep. So it's a very Lutheran thing. So so it comes out of Germany. A lot of these sort of typically stereotypical winter Christmas traditions have an origin around Lutheranism and therefore Germany, and that was kind of the cutting down the pine tree, bringing it inside, decorating it with lights. That was a very German thing. The Advent candle as well, and one of the things I really like about the Advent candles, so you have 4 candles, maybe a 5th one for Christmas Day, and so each week of Advent you light that candle over dinner. And then the next week you light that one and the next one, and then the third week. And so what you're doing experientially, the way you're experiencing Advent is the closer you get to Christmas, the brighter your room becomes.
That's kind of cool, isn't it?
Because week 1 there was just 1 candle, then 2 candles, then 3 candles, then 4 candles, then Christmas Day you've got 5 candles going. And so and if you think about Northern Hemisphere, it's quite dark. And so you've got the light of the dinner table getting brighter and brighter the closer you get to Christmas is a great reminder, visual, experiential reminder that you're getting closer and closer to Christmas Day. And also the whole season of Advent is all about anticipating Christ's second coming. And so, we anticipate looking forward to Jesus' return. Yeah. So those have been really important to us in previous years. That's been a good thing for us. Just being around church a lot, I think is really good. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember which one it was, but they were talking about how whether Christmas is more about your church family or your home family, like your biological family, and the difference in different traditions, like religious traditions, and how a lot of liturgical traditions like Anglicanism and Presbyterian and others have a high view of gathering together as God's people on Christmas Day. Right. But some of the sort of low church evangelical, particularly in America, have ended up putting the household, the family, as primary on Christmas Day, which has been interesting the few years when Christmas Day has fallen on a Sunday. Yeah. And there's been churches that don't open, and they're like, well, because we want to allow people to go to their homes, which is basically saying we realise your family, your biological family, is more important than the church family during this time. And I thought, that's really interesting perspective. So I think partly because of the quirk of we don't meet with my extended family until a few days later. But also just that tradition of, of course you go to Christmas on Christmas Day. Like we do 2 services on Christmas Eve and 1 on Christmas Day, and we're at church a lot over that weekend, and it's brilliant. Love it. So and that's just, I've never really questioned that, but I've also really enjoyed it. Yeah,
that makes sense. The thing that with Christmas, it always, like, you go through the thing of being a kid at Christmas, and you always wanted Christmas presents and stuff like that. And I grew up in a non-Christian family, but the thing that upsets me about Christmas is how stressed people get about it.
Right. Yeah.
And it's, I've got to go to all the presents, I've got to do all this, and that kind of thing you were talking about with Ross saying, well, really the nice time to spend is after Christmas.
Yeah.
Not before.
We need to bring back the celebration of the 12 days of Christmas.
Oh, yes?
So the 12 days of Christmas starts on Christmas Day, I believe. So that whole song, the 12 days. Yeah. So you count from Christmas up.
Yes.
And they're the 12 days of Christmas.
Yes.
And so I think that's another sort of cycle.
My kids' school do something like that. They like do these different things in the lead up to Christmas.
Yeah.
But
what about you? What do you guys do for Christmas?
I was just thinking about my wife's grandmother is a refugee from Latvia from World War II. And they have, it's been a really nice addition, because we're kind of talking about this, how it's funny how we all have different traditions in terms of family. But there's a nice tradition that we have now that my wife and I practice with our kids is there's a bit of a thing, it comes from Europe, is that you actually do a lot of Christmas celebrations on Christmas Eve.
Yes. Yep.
Which is, we have church on Christmas Eve, for example, but also there's like some gift giving, and like sometimes there's a dinner and things like that. So we don't have dinner anymore, but I think we have done that in previous times. But now as a family, we go to church on Christmas Eve and then come home, and my wife does this thing of making sure the kids have a present of new pajamas, a book to read, and what's the other thing? It's completely skipped. It's but 3 little things like that.
Yeah.
It's like a Christmas themed book, and it's just a nice way of celebrating, like leading into Christmas, rather than. I mean, I think it's one of the things that I get a little bit annoyed about with Christmas, I suppose, is like obviously the focus on Santa, and he's coming on Christmas night. So I think that tradition is kind of nice to lead into Christmas Day instead of like just the supposedly waiting for Santa. We don't actually do Santa with our kids, but apologies if I've ruined anyone's Christmas. But
Santa doesn't visit your house, is what you were trying to say.
Santa doesn't visit our house. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just have found that really nice thing to do as a family. Yeah. And then if we can on Christmas morning, Christmas Day morning, we try and go to the beach.
Oh, lovely.
It's just really nice.
Yeah.
So we do that. We take breakfast down and have breakfast at the beach and just hang out. This year it's kind of a bit different because my dad actually lives in the US. So we're going to see him later in Bali. And then since that's been happening, that side of the extended family doesn't really meet on Christmas at the moment. But then we'll have with my wife's family, because they have the Latvian tradition, their last name is Laukājs, which is an interesting name, but they call the Laukājs Lina, which is, the meal starts in between lunch and dinner.
Yeah, nice.
So it's like 3 p.m.
Yep.
But the idea is like it's just food is coming out constantly. So you start with like nibbles and stuff, and then you have like a main meal would be like a roast of some kind and lots of potatoes and all that kind of thing. And then
sounds delightful.
And then it's dessert and it's just like you're so full by the end, obviously. And then sometimes we'll go look at Christmas lights.
Oh, nice.
In the evening. So that's really cool. At this moment we're spending Boxing Day with my family. But I do like the kind of one day's Boxing Day, one day's Christmas Day, because we were doing, in previous years we've done 3 different Christmas events because my parents are separated as well. So we'd end up doing 3 different things all on Christmas Day. And we're so tired by the end of the day.
It's too much.
Yeah. And Boxing Day was like recovery day from all of that.
Yeah.
But I think that's the other thing that I get a little bit annoyed at Christmas is the focus taken away from Jesus and put on Santa and presents.
Yeah.
And I feel like that family thing kind of is more of to tie it all back to what you started with the kids service, is yes, you're being a family, but on that Christmas Eve thing for us, it's that joyful celebration of like Jesus as one is for us.
Yep.
And doing that just together we've been it with our church family, and then we're doing it with our immediate family. I think that's a really cool way of doing it.
Yeah. So, I think that's really good. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, we can get caught up with commercialization and the presence and the greed really of Christmas. Like, what am I getting under the tree, and all those kinds of things. And I think it's great to keep orienting us back to Jesus. One of the others I was thinking about, another tradition we picked up as we, me and my son particularly, were looking into some of our German heritage was that. So St. Nicholas actually comes on the 6th of December.
Right.
So that's St. Nicholas Tag, St. Nicholas Day. And that and so on the night of the 6th, he traditionally will bring food, fruit, nuts, and a toy. So again, small kind of trinkety type stuff, and leave it in your boot outside your room. And so we've started doing that regularly now that the kids wake up on the 7th, and St. Nicholas Tag has come. And again, we've never done Santa as in like we've never communicated to them there's a realness there. It's just kind of like this is a game that people play. But it's a great way of us, sort of joyfully joining in with our German heritage as well. And they get some little toys. So they got some little bits of fruit and nuts and a little Lego toy and things.
Yeah, that's cool.
On that day, and it just kind of helps break it in. Which means that on December 25th, it's actually the Christ child that comes and brings all your gifts. Because Santa's already come.
So Jesus bringing the gifts?
Yeah, basically. Yeah,
wow.
the Christ child. Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
So that's pretty cool.
And it's just lovely. I think, and again, tying back to another theme you're talking about, it being low-key relational because of what Jesus has won for us.
Yeah.
You're doing that thing of celebrating your family anyway, but it's like, well, Jesus has blessed us with our family.
That's right. Yeah.
Too, and it's not, it doesn't come about, we all got to get together. Like, it's a very Australian thing. It's like, get together with people you haven't seen for a year sometimes. And I think those kind of little things are actually a really good way of maybe mitigating the things that I'm talking about of just like, there's just so much stress and so much put on this. It's like, actually, let's use this time to celebrate what Jesus has done for us. By first of all being born and then dying on the cross for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you
John.
very much. Last one of 2023.
That's it. Another year.
Thank you for another year of Shock Absorber podcast with me and you and Stu and everyone else that's been on here.
Joey's been on a few times.
Joey has been on a few times. I'm sure he's going to keep coming on. This will be a break. We'll have a break for a couple of weeks on the Shock Absorber. If you're listening or watching, just to let you know, there'll be a break. But we'll be back next year in January with plenty of more content, and we're going to hit on a lot of Stu's PhD and what he's been researching there. So it's very
some good
exciting
stuff coming out there.
Very exciting. Even though this comes out of after Christmas, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Have a lovely time celebrating the birth of Jesus.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tim.
One way.
One way.